Hello, YouTubers and what news. This is your host, Brenda. At the hot topics of the bombing that took place. I do not have any articles on it at this time. Breaking news, several articles. And the latest that I have heard, though, is that there are over 50 people injured in that bombing, and it was a suicide bombing. It was a nail bomb that went off. People in our thoughts and prayers over in England. Ariana was going on and has decided that she's going to postpone the rest of her, and I guess you could say the rest of her tour. I'm being, I'm sure that from the whole incident as well. So, thoughts and prayers as well. The articles that I have for you here this morning, there's 16 of them, and all option of the video for your convenience. Conservative Tribune, the breaking late last evening, it says Anthony Weiner pleads guilty, has to register as disgraced former Democrat New York Representative Anthony in charge of transmitting sexual manner, a crime that press reported. The New York Times had scheduled appearances in federal court where he was expected to enter his alleged sexting with Weiner agreed not to 2027 and to register as a sex offender upon his release. For congressman with close ties to former failed Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, his right-hand aide, Huma Abedin, he reportedly broke down in tears as he issued an apology to the underage girl with whom he had exchanged sexually explicit text and videos. Conduct, I have a sickness, but I do not have an excuse, Weiner stated emotionally, according to CNN. Treatment found the courage to take a moral inventory of my defect, began a in mental health. I also included a demand that Weiner continue his mental health treatment, surrender his passport and iPhone, and avoid all contact with. The Times reported that Weiner's that he had been engaged in an online affair with an underage girl of the 2016 panel election season. In fact, Clinton and many of her supporters who refused to accept that President Donald Trump won the election fairly still routinely insist that a major factor in her loss was the FBI announcement in late October that it had reopened the investigation into Clinton's email scandal, only to close it again days later. Classified emails from Clinton and Abedin on Weiner's laptop while investigating his sexting crimes. Sexual appetite and indiscretions may have played a role in Clinton's electoral loss. It wasn't the deciding factor. It was, however, one more example of the sort of slimy and ethically questionable sort of people with whom she surrounded herself. It's also one more thing about which Trump can say, "I told you so." The next article off of globalresearch.ca. And we'll let the hamster catch up here. It says, all power to the banks. Regime of Emmanuel Macron. Ghost of past was real winner of the French presidential election. Emmanuel Macron won only because a majority felt they had to vote against the ghost of fascism, allegedly embodied by his opponent Marie Le Pen. Whether out of panic or out of the need to feel respectable, the French voted 2-1 in favor of a man whose program most of them either ignored or disliked. Now they are stuck with him for 5 years. On the issues, the majority would never have elected a man representing the transatlantic elite totally committed to globalization, using whatever is left of the power to weaken them still further, turning over decision-making to the markets, that is, to international capital, managed by the major banks and financial institutions, state Goldman Sachs. The significance of this election clarification, fairly thorough explanation, but also of what also impossible election of Marie Le Pen. Despite the multi-party nature of French elections, for the past generation, France has been essentially ruled by a two-party system. Republican Party and tradition on through various for recently Republicans imitation. For decades, there has been nothing socialist about the Socialist Party and nothing Gaullist about the Republicans. In reality, most have adopted economic policies, or more precisely, they have followed European Union requiring member states to adopt neoliberal economic policies, especially since the adoption of the common currency, the euro, a little over 15 years ago. Those economic policies have become tangibly harmful to France. Deindustrialization, the ruin of its farmers, and the growing indebtedness of the state to private banks. Well, political repercussions, the simplest reaction has been widespread reaction to pursue the same unpopular policies. Reaction has been to start realizing that it is the popular criticism of old Macron machine labeled in March, growing exploded the against both governing parties. It has broken and absorbed large parts of both in an obvious move to turn in March loyal to Macron. The destruction was so popular that it could not hope to win. It was prominent members of them who had been economics minister in government, but who all the media and socialist government. The Republican candidate Francois Fillon looked like a outgoing government, but despite his cared about preserving France and favored an independent foreign policy, including good relations with Russia. It is up with the information about alleged fake jobs Fillon gave passed on the weekly Canon chain, I guess it's pronounced. Critical moment, the uproar drowned in the issues to an electorate already wary of establishment politicians. The of Emmanuel Macron, too young to have done anything passage through Rothschild Bank. France, the presidential election is followed by a parliamentary election, which normally president. Macron had no party, so he is creating one for the occasion. Defectors from the major defeated parties, as well as his own innovation, candidates from civil society with no political experience, but personally. These civil society newcomers tend to be successful in the game of globalized competition, who will have no trouble voting for anti-labor measures. Macron is long-standing assertion, Marie Le Pen, that the two main parties were really one big single party. Differences mask their political convergence. The Macron victory demoralized Republicans, weakening them further. Macron named a Republican, Edouard Philippe, minister in a government with 4 socialists and 2 Republicans alongside his own selections from civil society. Macron won in part because older voters in particular were frightened by his opponents' hints at leaving the European Union, which they have been indoctrinated to prevent renewal of Europe's old wars. But only the hysterical anti-fascist scare can explain why self-styled leftist revolutionaries such as Francois Ruffin, known for his successful anti-capitalist movie Merci Patron, joined the stampede to vote for Macron, promising to oppose him later. But how? 5 years of Macron, opposition may be harder than ever. In recent decades, as manufacturing EU members such as Poland and Romania, France industry means loss of jobs, loss of fewer workers. When industry is no longer essential, workers have lost their key power, striking to shut down industry. Currently, the desperate workers in a failing auto workers factory in central France are threatening to blow it up unless the government takes measures to save their jobs. When it has no price tag. As political life, for been back to business time, and he has a mission, and he's in a hurry. An absolute majority in the June parliamentary election. 5 years. He means to use this period not to reform France into a different sort of country. If he has his way, in 5 years, France will no longer be a sovereign nation, but a rebel European Union, following a rigorous economy policy made in Germany by bankers and a bellicose foreign policy made in Washington by neocons. As usual, newly elected French president first move was to rush to Berlin to assess to the Franco-German partnership. He was most Merkel, thanks to his clear determination to force through the austerity measures demanded by the Frankfurt budget masters. Macron hopes that his fiscal obedience will be rewarded by consent to a European economic growth. The Pfeffing pinchy Germans show little sign of acceptance or to complete the dismantling of the French labor code to employers and government. For Macron, the ruin of French industry in individual initiatives symbolized to a prophylogetical transformation of the French ideal of equality from a horizontal concept, meaning equal benefits for all, to the vertical idea of equality of opportunity, meaning the theoretical chance of every individual to rise above the others. This is an idea easily accepted in the United States with its long-standing myth of the self-made man. The French have traditionally been logical enough to understand that everyone can't rise above the others. Horizontal equality in France has institutional redistribution of wealth via universal access to benefits such as healthcare, pensions, communications, and transportation facilities, allocations for families raising children, unemployment, and education at all. Threat union in various ways. One way is that impose privatization and favor foreign takeovers that transform public services into profit seekers. Another is the imposition of public budget restrictions along of the state to seek private loans, increasing its debt. All end up in making the state to continue. Very few French people would want to give to become a billionaire. And then there's a lot more to that article if you want to go ahead and read the talking about there. It's going to be interesting to watch what France does with this parliamentary election. Here's off of BizPac Review. It says, here's what Ivanka Trump did in Saudi Arabia that went underreported. President Donald Trump was his visit his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner. He wasn't along just to take in the sights, the self-described but by a described female leader within the Trump administration, including issues that have long been a priority to her. The first daughters posted a photo on Instagram honored by the Salma, while Rada by Princess Rima bint Bendur Authority and praised Saudi Arabia, according to ABC News. Saudi Arabia's progress. There's still a lot of work to be done, she said. Stories of Saudi women, such as yourself, inspire me to believe in possibility of global women's empowerment, Ivanka said, adding that they stand on the front line. Ivanka introduced World Bank President Jim Young Kim, who announced that and a total of $100 million and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. I thought it was fantastic, but we had no idea how quickly this would be said. I've never seen anything come. Leadership has been tremendous. Create a ripple in the news cycle. The pledge comparing this to the Clinton Foundation, which President Trump was highly critical of. It began with a tweet from who gave the impression Ivanka controlled the fund, even though her own or raised money call so on hand as her father delivered his we had a visit in Saudi Arabia, was proud to watch it, am excited to a busy woman. The first daughter also spoke at the Tweep's social media conference in Raja. Fox News video here in this article if you want to do that for yourself. The next article is off of BizPack Review. And the deal. Trump's trip. Israeli President Rivlin be 2 shots in less than 2 minutes at former U.S. President Barack Obama while praising new President Donald Trump. In Israel, the second stop on President Trump's historic, was happy to see us back. Mr. President, we are happy to see that America is back in the area. America is back again, Rivlin said. The defeating of ISIS as one of your top missions. This is the most important objective Israel will do every mission. He to assist you took a parent shot at Obama. Appreciates America's leadership and your administration in the action you took in Syria, he said. There are red lines in Syria that must never be crossed. There is a price that must be paid as human. It was thinly veiled swipe at President or former reference to enforce red lines. Obama famous government attacked its own people with COVID-19. Social media loved the Israeli president's. If you want to take a look at those. Next article is off of BizPack Review. It says President history was made on Monday as President Donald Trump became the first sitting president to visit Israel's Western Wall. President Trump wore a yarmulke as he said a prayer. The president also took prayer note from his pocket and placed it inside a crevice in the wall, a traditional practice of visitors. Was accompanied on the trip by his daughter Ivanka Trump, son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Secretary of State and alone. And the president and First Lady Melania Trump also made a pilgrimage to the church site where it is believed that Jesus was crucified and buried. The president's administration while taking. The next article is off of BizPack Review. President Trump's golf in Saudi Arabia to the surprise of his own staff. A monumental speech in Raja, Saudi Arabia, surprised even as with one key that stuck mainly to the script for most of his historic speech, but his inclusion of is shock to some. According to a senior White House official, the president went off the originally remarks simply because he was exhausted. He's just an exhausted guy, the official told reporters on the president planned to be softer in pain trail using Islamic using a radical Islam Middle Eastern leaders in front Islamism and the Islamist right terrorism was a focal point during the campaign, as it highlighted a shift in confronting terror. Hillary claiming that it castigated the Trump and insisted using the term defeat the enemy. So hard not to laugh. Reporters infer means Trump put him in timeout. It doesn't take much for Trump haters to get their rage and lose all rational thought. President Donald Trump is on his first, and New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman used social media to suggest that White House Washington early. Previous this week instead of staying, the Haberman tweeted. In a follow-up tweet, Haberman commented on how crowded Air Force One is on the trip, saying one other person will be joining Priebus in leaving early. Quick to respond was Jennifer Rubin. According to Post, the newspaper is a co-conspirator of the Times in the ongoing effort to destroy Trump. Naturally, Rubin infers guilt on the part of the president. Trump is frustrated with Priebus for why media is eager to. It's not clear if Priebus is actually leaving early or not. To stay together as if on the entire entourage school field trip where everyone is required to hold hands. Here's a sampling from Twitter of on the left toward the Trump White House. One says, with a kiss and the words, I know it was just Washington, D.C. And I'm going to scroll up. It says, Priebus ate some Saudi gas station kebabs. The next article, journalism. It says, Trump administration pushing countries to take back deportees. On matters like this, Trump administration is speaking not so softly and waving a After barely 4 months in office, President Donald Trump's administration has almost cut in half the number of countries that refuse to take back illegal immigrant criminals. The U.S. are crucial because illegal must either be held at cost to have committed crimes. 53,506. Complicating their removal is a Supreme Court ruling that limits how long illegal immigrants deportation can be held. Jessica Vaughn, Policy Studies Director at the Center for Study, aggressive approach, administration is speaking like that with so-called diplomatic demarcation. Obama administration's tools of choice. That's a lot more effective than apologetically delivered. The list of nations that is now at 12. Trump, immigration and customs enforcement that Somalia took back 259 deportees in the current fiscal year, a vast change from the 15. The wind being at our wings is really driving. Assistant director for the removal operations at ICE. China, two of the biggest has 35,000 Cubans with criminal records. They're accepting all in after January the 12th, Pineiro's added. U.S. law denying visas against countries back their deportees. ICE is also working to determine which. In the past, she said the list officials look at specific metrics. Next, conservative firing line. Allah's prepping for phase 5 of the plan. The battle is on. Template for any serious discussion at this site turns toward documenting what lies in wait. It's got something trying to get that stopped. I'm not sure if I got it. She's still spinning around here. I'm hoping so anyway. Okay, we'll try it again. Whenever any serious toward documenting Islamic Jihad, inevitably the plan serves for sufficing centrality. Come on here.
Texas, where one
you're not. Okay, I'll tell you what. We'll just shut that one down. I'm not going to have them playing their ads here. Good gravy. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Rick Wells says, active ISIS water food injection poisoning plot uncovered. Anyone who was around and remember we are to evil, sick people who just in those murders, 7 people died from the original lacing of Tylenol capsules. Deaths from copycat offenders. There were batch numbers on the medications. Imagine how difficult or impossible it is to prevent similar as they move from target to target. The description of evil, sick, with some recent discoveries of them conducting tests on human guinea pigs revealed in documents found in hidden University after Iraqi special forces recaptured the large terrorists. Contained food and water that contained compounds used in pesticides and which are easily available, including in the U.S. a program that has been in existence for at least 3 years to develop the capacity or the capability to conduct such a dissolve quickly in liquids. 6 tests in which one victim was fed tasteless salt, which is water soluble. Once ingested, the victim suffered stomach and death. Documents lethal claiming to be an ample spill demands. The documents were verified by British and U.S. forces. They were also found for injection, which reportedly has no antidote. The victim was devoted in within seconds and died out in cigarettes contained in supplies. Thallium sulfate is available for sale in many countries, including the U.S. With the retaking of most Mosul, is believed relocated to the ISIS pronounced in Syria area, because we've got more and more of these Muslim plants and other various industries that produce spies. And you don't know which one of them is a radical and which ones aren't. Very, very, be very of. The next article is off of Breitbart. Is Sweden, men of foreign origin responsible for 90% of the shootings. In firearms are carried out by, according to research carried out by Dangens Near, 90 out of 100 offenders and suspected one having roots in the Middle East. In around half of the cases, the men were born in Sweden, whilst others migrated to the majority of the country at a young age. The study looked at 53 convicted and 47 suspended perpetrators involved in shootings in the public places which have taken place since 2013. The fact is that street gangs and violence are phenomena that occur in some areas. So the people who live in these sociologists at Stockholm have released in North Africa with offenders Somalia, Lebanon, Turkey, is I previously conducted on members of Degens. Sweden's Crime Prevention Council, which is responsible for compiling official crime statistics, have released a number of reports on gun-related violence. None of these have looked at the background of perpetrators. The background of offenders is not something that the government has ever asked us to examine, said Lars Kozel, co-author of the 2016 report Criminal Networks and Gangs. The Crime Prevention Council Director General, Eric Winterstrom, said he is now open to the idea of examining offenders' ethnic backgrounds in the future. I think we could discover some interesting things if we investigate this data, he told them. We already knew that the new arrivals are generally overrepresented in crime, but we don't know how long it will take before these trends start to slow down. We try to keep an eye out for patterns we can study so as to gain new insight into crime. This could be the one. This could be, or this could well be one such pattern. At a two-day rally to protest rampant violence in Rickenby, where 90% of the residents were either born abroad or to foreign parents, speakers blamed racism, colonialism, and politicians for the crime in the suburbs. The rally, Suburb of Violence, was held in Rickenby, saw 22 murders take place in less than 2 years. Next article is off of Breitbart. It says Obama's ICE released nearly 600 sex offenders after countries refused deportation. Immigration officials released nearly 600 convicted sex offenders. Try that again. Nearly 600 convicted sex offenders, illegal aliens, back into U.S. streets. Many, because of their home countries, refuse to accept the deportation. Immigrants and Customs Enforcement officials reported that 564 illegal aliens convicted of sex crimes were released after a judge issued removal orders. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2001 that ICE officials cannot indefinitely jail illegal immigrants ordered deported if their countries refuse to repatriate them. The numbers reported come from a review by the Immigration Reform Law Institute of the latest accounting review of fiscal year 2015. The IRLI found that the 164 released refusing to accept them back. Immigration legal watchdog obtained records through a Freedom of Information Act request. The documents contained reports that of the 564 criminal aliens released, 194 were convicted of sexual assault, 95 were convicted of criminalized or commercialized sexual offenses, and 275 were convicted of other sexual offenses. The anti-borders into the immigration issue, claiming that anyone IRLI Executive Director Dale Wilcox told the Washington Examiner would show the horrific consequences of having an unregulated immigration step over them like they don't exist. 564 released sex offenders. Immigration judges released 218. 12 others were released under prosecutorial discretion issues, including DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival. Immigration officials did not release the names of the released sex offenders or their locations, the IRLI reported. In 2015, Breitbart News reported that ICE officials do not track the released sex offenders. They also do not add them to sex offender registration lists. Then executive operation at ICE, Gary testified before a House Congressional Subcommittee. Movie tests criminal aliens have committed other crimes: arson, assault, property damage, extortion, forgery or fraud, homicide. Crimes include kidnapping, weapons offenses, embezzlement, controlled substance offenses. At least 2 officers, he testified. Police Center for Immigration Studies Policy Studies Director Jessica Vaughn reviewed the fiscal year 2015. 1,040 convicted criminals were ordered deportation, reported in July of 2016. Of those, only 6,905 72,135 convicted order of report years the past 4 and represents a 20% increase over the 20 enforcement reports obtained by CIS. In addition to the country's refusal to ordered deported simply disappear after being released. Mark Metcalf in court data and found and skip out on their hearings, Vaughn wrote in the report. Vaughn reported sanctuary city policies as the third major contributing reason orders. Among these is Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, serving time asked to take custody of the criminal alien When that charge was dropped, the sanctuary city of San Francisco ignored immigration. A few months later, he allegedly walking along a San Francisco pier with her father. Breitbart News has reported extensively on Steinel's murder and the controversy over the city's sanctuary policy. Congress is attempting to take action against countries that refuse to accept deportees. In July, Breitbart Texas reported Senator John Cornyn, Texas Republican, filed Casey's Law, a bill named after a woman murdered by a Haitian criminal alien not deported after being released from prison. The Remedies for Refusal of Repatriation Act calls for the holding countries that refuse to accept deported aliens accountable. Casey's Law would establish clear criteria to identify and hold accountable countries that systematically refuse or delay the or delay the reparation of their citizens who have been convicted of violent crimes, pose a threat. Illegal immigrants office convicted of violent crimes should not be left on them back. Consequences. Senator Cornyn stresses and keep our country safe. Ted Poe also filed legislation to pressure countries the U.S. of this bill is to restrict diplomatic visas from this to those that deny or unreasonably the purpose delay reparation for citizens ordered removed by the U.S. immigration judge. This is one aspect of border security and national security that has unfortunately slipped through the cracks, Poe said after filing the bill in 2015. We give convicted foreign criminals a get-out-of-jail-free card to live in the United States and origin refused to take them back. This is dangerous and deadly. A time we offer proper incentive to these uncooperative nations and our immigrants who freely take our money and turn around and it is time to disrespect our laws. We should not be issuing diplomatic visas to nations that refuse to cooperate with our government. Keeping their criminals here is endangering our citizens. The has revealed at least 925,100 to leave the country. And that are still in Nevada and Oregon, and they'll be there indefinitely. Haven't been given a speedy trial. Courts. And the intention seems to be to keep him in jail forever and abuse them. While these criminals are walking our streets, raping crimes, and there seems to be nothing that can be done about it. It's amazing to me that the populace does not and senators responsible for the carnage that's taking. Everybody walking around. Nobody calls, nobody writes, nobody goes to their congressman or senator and looks them square in the eye and go on. Next, our review. says Australia is refugees illegal October the 1st to prove they are legitimate country. And Minister for Immigrant Border Protection, Peter Dutton, announced Sunday on fake refugees who arrive illegally by boat. 50,000 people who have wrong reasons to provide any documents of their identity. Those fake refugees provide detailed protection. We're going to set a deadline for those people, and we have set that deadline for the end of this, according to 9 News. Australia has illegally are put in indefinite detention islands. Many have criticized the practice and suicide. Taxpayers cost hundreds of millions of dollars each year. It's a very serious, costing Australia taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, money that could be spent on education, on health, on police, on other services in the community. He said, if people think they can rip the Australian taxpayers off, if people think that they can con the Australian taxpayers, then I'm sorry, the game's up. The government is also trying to limit legal immigration. Prime Minister Malcolm Trump's plans in order to temporary skills to temporary visas that 457 visa. The change will not affect the 9 visa. Wow, longer allow 457 visas to be passports to jobs that could and should. We are jobs first. We're putting Australians first. The next article is off the Conservative Tribune. Bombshell. May 3rd calendar entry. Try that again. May 3rd calendar entry will clear Trump. Media in panic mode. Washington Post may very well have led the American public seriously astray by its recent attacks on President Donald Trump. The Post claimed that former FBI Director James Comey wrote a memo in which he said that Trump had asked him to drop the investigation on former administration member Michael Flynn, despite a clear claim to the contrary by Comey's successor, acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. What's more frustrating is, try it again, what's more frustrating than that is the fact that the Post claimed anonymous sources backed up its statements but provided no real substance. Just look for a second at his verbiage. This is an actual serious line from the Washington Post that they just expect the good people of America to believe. It says, I hope you can let this go, Trump said, according to Comey's notes, which were described by the associates. Comey's written account of the meeting is 2 pages long and highly detailed, the associates said. This guy said, according to notes that we don't actually have and were only allegedly described to us, really solid, hard-hitting journalism. And although Comey has not come out and said specifically that Trump never asked him to stop investigating Flynn, he certainly seemed to imply it in testimony he gave the Senate Judiciary Committee when asked whether senior DOJ officials could ask the FBI to drop an investigation. Comey said flat out, "It's not happened in my experience," according to a transcript provided by, once again, the Washington Post. Although that is not a denial of Trump himself having asked Comey to drop the investigation, there does seem to be that Trump had said something. The Post statement doesn't mean much at all when you consider the actual on the record in front of witness claims made by acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe that fly right in the face of these unsubstantiated accusations. When Senator Marco Rubio asked McCabe before the Senate Intelligence Committee whether or not the firing of former FBI Director James Comey in any way impeded, interrupted, stopped, or negatively impacted any work, any investigation, or any ongoing projects at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was even more definitive than the question given to him dictated. McCabe said, the work of the men and women at the FBI continues despite any change in circumstances, any decisions, so there has been no effort to impede our investigation to date. No effort at all to impede our investigation to date. Interesting. The Washington Post editors tried to cover themselves by saying it's unclear from the questioning if McCabe was talking solely about the consequences of Comey's abrupt firing or referring to specific investigation on Trump's associates for possible connections to Russian officials. Yeah, right. That's not the only thing unclear here. The next article is off of BizPac Review. IT aides fear suspects in breach are blackmailing members with their own data. Congressional technology aides are baffled that data theft allegations against 4 former House IT workers who were banned from the congressional and they fear the integrity of the relatives were them from computer networks at the House of Representatives congressional Excel computers without permission. 5 Capitol Hill technology aides told the Daily Caller News Foundation that members of Congress had hence suspects who police say victimized them. Wondered if the suspects are blackmailing representatives based on the contents of their emails and files to which they had full access. I don't know what they have, but they have something on someone. It's been months at this point with no arrest, said Pat Sowers, who has managed IT for several houses or several House offices for 12 years. Something's rotten in Denmark. A manager at tech services company that works with Democratic House offices said he approached congressional offices offering their services at 1/4 the price of Awan and his Pakistani brothers, but the members declined. At the time, he couldn't understand why his offers were rejected, but now he suspects the Awans exerted some type of leverage over the members. There's no question about it. If I was accused of 1/10 of what these guys are accused of, they'd take me out and handcuff me, and I'd never work again, he said. The Awans ban sent 20 members searching for new IT workers, but another contractor claims he had difficulty convincing offices to let him fill the void. He members wrongly believed that he blew the whistle on the Awans theft, and they is accused of stealing equipment from members' offices without their knowledge and committing violations on the House IT network. A House IT employee who requested anonymity said the tech workers who have taken over some of those offices found the computers in some, but not all offices, were thin clients that sent all data to an offsite server in violation of House policies. Additionally, staffers' iPhones were all linked to single non-government iTunes accounts. Awan began working Representative 5 and brother's wife and 2 of his brothers, Democrats, payroll records show. They have collected $4 million since it was widely known that Awan and eventually bulk of the work for various his 20-year offices, while no-show employees were listed on member roll in order to collect additional $165,000 salaries. workers said. This circumvented a rule that prevents any one staffer from making more than members of Congress. Members were fiercely protective of the business despite objectively shoddy work and requests for computer help routinely ignored for weeks, all said. An IT specialist who took over a WAN office said they did not keep an inventory of what hard it had. The number of offices they had had covers coupled with customer service that wasn't there, Sowers said. The Democratic IT staff said Awan would come in and only help the member. He'd tell me this because staff come and go. There was one staffer whose computer was broken, and I said I'm not going to pay any of my invoices until you fix my computer. And Awan, or try that, and Imran went to the member and said they fired the staffer who complained. That day, Imran has the power. Sowers said, I love the Hill, but to see this clear lack of concern over what appears to be a major breach bothers me. Everyone has said for years that they were breaking the rules, but it's just been a matter of time. An employee of a third private company with most of the had more offices than anyone said Awan yet. There's networking meetings once a week, and I never saw them ever come to them. Contribute or reply. An investigation goes of millions of dollars. The employee read all the emails dozens of members of Congress sent and access any files members and their staff stored. Court records show the brother $100,000 to an Iranian fugitive who had been tied to Hezbollah, and their stepmother says they often send money to Pakistan. When you're an admin for an office, yes, you have access to everything. Specialist said. While she was the chairman of the renamed to circumvent the Democratic Representative Marcia Fudge's office, she had not a man either, or Amran. Wasser Meeks and after Walter and the House Democratic Caucus office retained the Iwan incumbents. Encouraged newly elected members to place the family caucus for all of them, and they couldn't possibly support. Specialist said, "You have the power to office remove a trusted advisor. How could you not see this? Maybe it's not this." Do this for years, the specialist continued. Another Democratic idea, it's contractor. Don't say anything. This will all blow over if we don't say anything. The members who could go down over this. The next one's off of BizPack Review. This is the final one for the month. Is Alabama electing Confederate? The Alabama would prevent changing of the names of or historic Confederate monuments. The bill, alteration, renaming, or other disturbance of any architecturally significant building or more public property for 40 years or more. Reads the text. Senator Gerald Allen, a Republican sponsor, as a wave of political correctness, who, despite having flaws, were important to protecting history, said Senator American, according to Yahoo, protecting oppression to a large part of the people in the state of Alabama. Are you good with the sanitizing of history as we are seeing in New Orleans? Inquired Representative Matt, which responded that the decision to remove tractors rename Confederate memorials should fall to small approved Ivy, Alabama's governor. Alabama's decision, its statues. The Senator comments in time for publication. So if you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody subscribe. Okay.